Welcome to the Warrior Mindset Podcast. We're your guide as you make your way through life, getting better 1% every day. We believe that life is lived and true victory won through adversity. Nothing easy is ever worth it. We believe in the warrior ethos and support those that choose to walk that path.
Jen, how's it going?
Is it common that the first thing people say on this podcast is, "Oh my God, I now feel I'm a warrior"?
They don't say that, but I appreciate it.
I mean, that was so inspiring. That was like a chariots
Cool.
of fire.
Yeah. A little bit.
Yeah.
Do you know, back in the day, do you know Berman Painter?
No.
Never heard that name?
I don't think
That's
so.
his voice. He's got like one of the sexiest voices I think I've ever heard.
Did you pay him to make your
No, he's
thing?
so nice. He did it just out of the goodness of his heart. But he did the intro to Carl Smith, Carl and I's original podcast, Bizcraft. He did the intro to that too. So
Oh my gosh.
he's got a great voice.
Just saying, for the next podcast I make, calling this guy.
You should. He'd probably do it for free. I haven't talked to him in a long time, so he probably wouldn't do it for free anymore, but that's how it goes. How are you?
How am I? I don't know if this ever happens to Eugene, but sometimes I have to like literally look at my calendar and see where I just was and what happened this morning and where I'm going to figure out. I realize that's like says a lot probably about my life, but today, this early February day, I am feeling pretty good. Last year was hard, but and January lasted a long time. But early February at this point, I would say I am good / on my way to be good.
That's cool. I like how you took a second and thought about your answer. Most people just give you the rhetorical, like, fine, whatever.
Yeah. You know, what's interesting, and here we can just kind of jump on in, but I just said, like, last year was a challenging year.
Mm-hmm.
And I didn't really want to have catch-up coffees with people.
Oh, got you.
A lot, because it was like, I don't really want them to ask how I am.
Right.
Because I could do one of two things. One is I could be like, pretty good, busy, how's it going? Which is very false and not me. Or the other thing is it immediately begins like a therapy session, you know, and it's like, I just was like, I just want to have a normal like Tuesday, you know, I don't really want to do that. So I kind of socially, I kind of moved it around a little bit. I don't know if that ever happens to you, but.
Well, that is one of those questions like, hey, how's it going? It's like, you have to judge, like, are they just sending me words, or are they like, do they want to know?
Yeah. And I pretty much hemorrhage vulnerability. So I'm almost never the person who is that sunny. There's actually a person that I'll just keep this as vague as possible. There's a person in my neighborhood who, whenever you see her, she's like, hi, how are you? And I'm like, I don't have time for you, but I'm like,
I know.
Hey, how are you?
Sometimes you don't have time for it.
No.
Well, Jen, I've been wanting to get you on the show for a while, and it's partly my fault because I keep having things happen and then things get moved, but this is a testament to never giving up.
We are warriors. We have earned that intro.
Make it happen. So I want to get right to it. I mean, there'll be a little brief people can read and stuff, but you inspire me because you are doing your own thing. I mean, you've been running your own business. Mm-hmm. You're a coach. How would you describe the type of coach you are?
Well,
there's no way I could do it for myself, but.
Right. Well, I would take like kind of two tacks there. The first is, what is your SEO coach term? Right? So at some point, I put leadership coach on there because the truth was it wasn't fake. You know, I coach mostly leaders or emerging leaders. So on kind of one angle, I would say I'm a leadership coach. Yeah. And frankly, that really draws me because leaders are some of the people who don't have almost anybody to vent to sometimes. And they need confidentiality. And so, for example, if you have to go fundraising for $1 gajillion, it's not probably appropriate that you turn to your team and be like, God, I'm so nervous. Right.
Yeah.
Like,
I didn't get a lot of sleep last night. They're like, bro, we don't care.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Whoops. Barely learned my lines, you know? Yeah. So in those ways, I think, I feel very drawn to kind of supporting leaders in that way.
Yeah.
In terms of the kind of coach that I am, like, underneath, I guess, kind of as, nobody ever asked this, so thanks for asking that. I think I am a combination of a good listener and I'm very active. So you're going to
Okay.
say things to me and I hear you and I'm going to be patient and listen. And then I'm going to jump in and be not too much, but I'm going to be excited to unpack it with you.
Right.
So I have had experiences in the past with some therapists who are a lot more sort of like quiet, take notes. And that's not the kind of support system I want as a person, but also it's really not the kind of coach I am. So I'm going to throw interesting things at you, but also maybe you find this too. Actually, I'm going to ask this right back to you. I'm the kind of coach depending on what my client needs. So there are some clients who want consulting and there are some clients who want to like cry. And so, I have a range. Is that true for you too?
It is. It's a fine line between coaching and therapist.
Yeah.
I think they're intertwined.
Yeah.
Pretty deeply, honestly, even in the physical and dietary coaching that I do. It's not that different than the business coaching, which I do less of. But
yeah.
Do you find that you spend a lot of time teaching people how to listen?
I definitely teach that in my manager training course, because what I often talk about the fact that there's invisible data in the air. Like you can pretend that people aren't telling you other things beneath their answer, or you can listen to that. And if you listen to that, then you're just going to have an easier way in the world with people. So depending on my energy, like when you said, how's your day today? If I was like, dude, so good. Our puppy is getting trained. Like you can hear my energy underneath it, right?
Yeah.
But if I was like, we got a puppy. She's super cute, but she's kind of a lot it's basically the same content, but the energy underneath it is different. And so that's a lot of what I teach in a manager training context is how are people talking about a puppy?
Got you.
Yeah.
Which, by the way, the last time we talked, you had just gotten the puppy.
Oh, I recall. She was probably eating everything.
Yeah. So how's that going? Any better?
Yeah. I mean,
bigger, more damage.
More damage, definitely bigger, eating dumb stuff. But today, actually, right now, she's at puppy daycare for the first time.
Ooh, nice.
I know, and she was so jazzed to be there, and tail wagging off her little body. It was so cute.
That's awesome.
Yeah.
Well, so there's that. And then you work for yourself, and I don't, I don't want to put words in your mouth. I know you don't necessarily want to be defined by it, but you have survived some health issues.
Yep. That is a really nice neutral way to say it, Pete.
Yeah. So what was that like? No, for real, like most people that I know, and I've known a few, and I just lost my father to cancer, like at this point, like 2 months ago.
Yeah.
And he is a big inspiration for me in terms of this whole thing, the warrior mindset, because he's an old school farmer, like this dude's just not going to give up. And the amount of like, just like shit and pain that he went through and didn't tell anyone and didn't show it for, a decade it's inspiring. On one hand, it's inspiring that a human can do that. And then on the other hand, it's like why did you do that?
Yeah.
Like, so there's like a lot there, but, surviving something like that and then running your own business at the same time. Like I like to think I'm tough, but I have no idea. Like I would probably not be doing one of the two,
Yeah, that is, this is a huge topic. So let me give a little context for listeners who don't happen to know me or know my story. So, Plucky, my business is almost 10 years old now.
Oh,
so
wow.
Thanks. In September, I know. So if I take us back to 2016, that is how many years ago? Yeah. So it was only a couple years into doing Plucky. So it was an established business. I was absolutely running it. But I had just had a baby 7 months earlier, my second son. And I was having all kinds of...
Also a giant, like...
Yeah.
Really? Yeah. Sorry.
2016, politically, personally, was intense for all of us.
Yeah.
But anyway, so I was having a lot of symptoms that we kind of wrote off as having a newborn or running a business and coming back from mat leave, stuff like that. And the long story short is that we discovered that I had a brain tumor. And it was a big one. It was like the size of a lemon, and it was behind my left eye.
Wow.
And this was like never on the radar. So I'm sure that you or anyone listening, not only in the health sphere, but there's probably something that you're like, oh, that exists on planet Earth and that'll never be in my ballpark.
What's everything? Yeah.
Yeah, totally.
Yeah.
So suddenly this new identity shows up where you have a brain tumor, lady, and you need to have it out like pronto. So about 2 weeks later, I had a craniotomy at UCSF in San Francisco. And that means that I don't want to get too gross for everybody listening, but basically that means that they opened my head.
They can handle it.
Okay. And they made a hole in my skull and they pulled the brain tumor out from there. And then they put my face back together.
Yeah.
And so I have this big scar from ear to ear across the top of my head. And they got it. That's the great news, right? Like, knock on wood, they got it all. It was benign. It's called a meningioma. And obviously, you know, we found it on April 8th. So if you just went April 8th to May 8th of my life, like, what the is happening, right? Like, oh my, it's 4 weeks, but it's 100 lifetimes. So yeah, it was really intense. I mean, obviously I closed the business for a pause.
Right.
Because I'm the only person working and I was,
engaged,
you know, I closed it for about 6 months. And a lot of that was just me absorbing what just happened to me.
Yeah.
And, you know, people are so lovely. And when I came back to coaching in about October that year, you know, my client would be like, I say, okay, what do you want to talk about today? What's going on? And they'd be like, well, I have a hard conversation to give, but I mean, it's nothing like brain surgery, but you know, and I had to give major permission. Like, it's okay. You don't need a brain tumor to have a problem. Right.
Yeah. Right.
Like, people are so kind and thoughtful. So in any event,
right.
A couple things come to mind for me about the story. So in the end, healing happened. I was okay. I do have seizures now. So that's a whole other thing to watch. I'm on meds for that. But I knew it was a very spiritual experience, actually. And I knew that I was going to write a book about it. And I like this is, I can't remember exactly if it was right before surgery or right after surgery, but I felt like I got this message. You're writing a book about this, and it's called I Believe in Everything. So I was like, okay. So I'm a writer also on the side. And I took 6 years and I wrote the book, and I finished it last April. And I was like, okay, everyone, I did it. You can do something now. Like, send me a publisher or whatever. Right. So last year, part of the reason it was hard is that I was starting to shop that book around. And that is an industry. I'm mostly in the tech industry, right? That is, publishing industry is not a, you know, place that I know very well.
Right.
And so to get rejected twice a week for the memoir that you kind of felt was your spiritual invitation.
Right.
And they don't even read it. You know, they all have these ridiculous requirements, like send us 10 font, 10 pages PDF. And then this one wants 50 pages, 12 font. I mean, it's just ridiculous. And so in October, I was like, I'm pulling the plug on this. I need a pause for mental health. And so what I just wrote down when you were asking me is two things. One thing that kind of revived me at the end of last year.
Ooh, yeah.
Was, and I'm saying this to you, and I'm so annoyed that I'm saying this to you because it's probably going to mean it's going to manifest, and this is a buttload of work. But but all of a sudden, the thing that gave me energy was, what if I start a second business? And I wrote on this Post-it, I'm starting a small press.
Oh yeah, okay.
And I was so to step back. My approach this year is going to be not to look at the big 5 publishers and agents, but to look for an indie press or a small press. And should that not pan out, I guess I got to start my own press, you know, and that is so annoying to me. But
you can do it.
I mean, know I can't, but come on. I also want to, like, you know, walk my dog.
Yeah. Well, whatever.
I know. So
Okay, but I mean, it's all done, so
Exactly, right. But I think maybe you feel this too as an entrepreneur. Sometimes you're like, can the thing I want just already exist? Could I
Yeah.
just be invited to a party instead of need to hold and make the party?
Oh
Like,
man.
how tiring, right?
Yeah. Yeah. So, how we met, well, I don't even remember.
It's a
It's
bureau thing.
over 10 years ago, but
Yeah.
was through events. So I used to create and produce conferences for this industry, the tech industry.
Mhm.
And I still can't go to one. So good luck. You'll never be able to read a book again.
I know. Well, that's also part of what kind of deconstructed in my head is that I couldn't go into a bookstore without seeing research. Oh, I should look and see in the back page in the acknowledgments who was their agent, da, da, da.
Yep.
And so it was really noisy and pressureful. And then I'm a huge reader too. So like even the prospect of picking up a book, it was like, can I read this fiction book for pleasure? Or should I really read like a memoir that would give me, I don't know. So it really diluted all this joy I had. And then more recently with this new stuff simmering about a path I might need to pave myself, I also got this feeling like the brain tumor, no joke, is huge, but I don't want that to be my only story.
Right.
Like, I hope to live a very long life after this.
Right.
And it would be such a shame if something that happened to me when I was 35 is the rest of my life. And I do not want to be held back by that. So it also has been an invitation to diversify what I write about. So I'm in a writing class actually right now, which is not, I mean, I could write about the brain tumor, but I'm specifically not.
Right.
And to be like, okay, Jen, you need to see writing as more than in service of this brain tumor story.
Right.
So when you're talking about your dad, you're making me think about that too, which is that at some point we can choose, hey, guess what? I'm tired of the storyline. It doesn't go away, but I would prefer to turn the volume up on something else. And I think I'm wrestling with that. And like I said, kind of getting a little bit more of a handle on it.
Yeah. He would never put it in words like this just because it's not the type of man he was. But I had conversations with him, months before he passed, and it was obvious in the way he was saying things and talking about it. He did not want to be identified after he was gone as having died from cancer. Like, I knew that was something. It was more like, remember the stories, like, share the stories, share, the things you learned and stuff like that, instead of just like this thing. And I feel that deeply. And it's made me stop and think about it in my own life. Like if I were to leave this earth right now, at the end of this podcast, like what would I be remembered for? What are those stories that people would tell? And that's moving.
Absolutely.
That'll move me.
I feel like you have a leg up in some ways because I don't know all the details, but you have engaged on planet Earth in a number of different ways. You have led a couple different businesses, you have led conferences and those sorts of things. So the way your network has come to you is already very diversified. And I say that also maybe for people listening to be encouraged that if you kind of have been in the same job forever, let's just say, there might be some interesting peace to be found, or the opposite of peace, like excitement, risk, challenge, by accepting another mission. I don't know how else to say it, right? Like, okay, cool. And I don't mean like side hustle necessarily, because I know everybody's busy and has thin margins sometimes to do extracurriculars, but what other story would you like to diversify who you come into contact with? And I think I was telling you a minute ago that previous to this conversation, I was recording an episode for a podcast that I'm about to launch. And I said to my guest, I was like, I'm going to be honest with you, I have no idea who's going to listen to this. Like, it could be, for sure, it will be tech people. And I was like, but it could be people that I did like a master's in French with. And it could also be like my third grade teacher. And like, there's all kinds of people on Instagram who follow me.
Your
but
cousin.
100%, right? And to me, actually, that might be a reflection of what I would be remembered for eventually, is a lot of different things. So maybe that's part of what we're talking about.
I think so. I think that's, I do. I'm sure you do too. And this is why I bring it up. I talk to a good bit of people that feel stuck. They feel that same feeling. They feel like, what they're doing is not worthy of legacy, or what they're doing is just kind of meh. They're pushing the buttons, all day.
Yeah.
And I mean, do you run into that too with like leaders that you coach? Is that like a thing that?
Yeah.
So I feel it, and it
yeah.
could be because it's like, that thing where you buy a new car and then you drive around and you see the same type of car, where you're like, I'm just thinking about it. That's why I see them. But
yeah, right now that's golden retrievers for me, because we
yeah,
have golden retrievers.
exactly.
I'm like, oh, look, that's what she'll look like in a year. They're so big. Yeah. Well, I think that's recognition, and you're probably looking for confirmation in some ways,
Right.
or normalizing, right? Again, to go back to this manager training that I teach, a lot of what I'm teaching is normalization, that the feelings or struggles you're having, or joys and victories, are not only in your head. Everybody has those questions. So when you leave, yeah, you have skills for sure from this class, but also you feel like you were part of a community and you're not the only one doing it. And I think that's really very powerful. The stuckness that you're talking about, oh my gosh. I mean, to be honest, I feel like in 2023, we are all a little COVID PTSD here.
Yeah.
Myself very much included, right?
Yeah.
Where like, I'm really struggling. I'm doing a little better at it, but like to plan something more than 2 months out, it's like, this is going to get canceled.
Yeah.
This is going to go away.
Right.
Yeah, exactly. Does that resonate for you? Do you have that COVID stuff too?
Oh, yeah. It does. It does. What is that? What do you think? I mean, why do you think? Because we use COVID as a, I almost feel like we use it as a crutch a lot of times, but like why is that? Why do you think that created all this sort of angst for people? Because I would say, you've made it through COVID, but you've also made it through a brain tumor. And while one is worse than the other, they're kind of like socially maybe on the same level.
Yeah. I think the brain tumor was my own journey, and I could go inward and I could pick it up or put it down depending on the day. Difference for me with COVID was that it was everywhere, saturated, obviously. It was a long-term thing. So brain tumor, obviously the inner processing was happening for a very long time, still does happen. But with COVID, in particular with COVID, I had a kindergartner and a second grader at home on Zoom school and working at the same time. And, my husband is working. Yeah. So the heaviness of that, and just the boredom of Groundhog Day every single day, can't go anywhere. That was a lot too. I think if I unpack what your question means, I think there's something about risk going on here, which is, I think we have been a little frozen to take risks, or everybody, it was revealed that everybody has a real spectrum of what they allow risk to show up, right? Or how they allow it to show up. So, and obviously on some level, I'm talking about masking, but there's a question of like, when do I invite risk back in, and in what ways? And so, I think some of what we're handling is it okay to take risks again? Probably in all the ways, right? But the muscle memory comes back from COVID, which is what was risk appropriate. And that's probably dictating a lot of, I don't know, layoffs right now, I would say. And
I think so.
Right? Economy stuff.
Yeah. You've been an entrepreneur for over 10 years. I see things, obviously I pay attention to groups. I'm in these groups. I'm in all these damn Slack groups and things. And there's all this stuff. And everyone is constantly and I'm on let's just be honest, I'm on a different scale than some people's businesses.
Yep.
It's like me and 2 other dudes. This is not a business where it's like, I'm sitting on top of 400 employees. I get it.
Sure.
But like, we want to forecast everything. You know what I mean? And it's like, we're laying out. I see people being laid off for forecasts they're making about the third quarter.
Yep.
And it's like, wow, and maybe it's, I don't know what I don't know, but it just seems you hit the nail on the head with the word risk. It just feels like people are more sensitive to it. You're absolutely right.
Yeah. And also, people are really afraid of conflict, and they're really afraid of hard conversations.
Yeah, that's
So
out there too.
like for these larger companies that are saying like it's performance management, I'm like, well, then you're telling me that 1,000 hard conversations haven't been happening.
Right.
If they're all hitting on the same day, then you better get some manager training. Like,
Yeah.
don't call me. That's probably a deeper problem that I even want to handle.
Yeah.
But you know what I mean? Like, that is a reflection to me. If it is a question about I don't know, the future, that's what you're talking about, right? Sort of like, where will we be in Q3?
Feels like it.
Then get on some performance improvement plans or start making choices based on performance today.
Right.
But like set some precedents so that along the way you could make a more nimble decision. And you're not just right now being like, oh, I'm so scared Q3. Get out of here. You know, it's like, all right, cool. We'll have the conversations today that need to get out. And then, you know, a little more patience. But I think it's a better marketing moment right now for people to be like, gosh, everybody's having recessions. Everybody's having layoffs. We also are in the same group as Meta and Google, and woo, we're really important in the world, you know? And I'm like, I'm really being rude here, but you know, a lot of love for everybody going through it, obviously, but the business decision makers, there is almost like a magnetic pull towards this is what we're all doing now. And so to make these kind of pronouncements is anti-risk. And also there's comfort in anti-risk right now because other people are doing it. I don't know. Don't call me an economist. I'm really not, but
right.
It's my social emotional read on the recession, Gene.
I think, but I think there's some emotional baggage that we're carrying around that, you know, again, we're going to just look at, you know, the economics of our business and use those as an excuse, I think. As an entrepreneur, you have to be pretty risk tolerant. Do you find that you were risk tolerant from the start, or is it something that you've just kind of like got religion with?
I never thought I would start a business. I mean, I think I just said I have a master's in French literature. Like I'm like oldest of 3 kids. I'm like a good student. I'll write my thesis, you know. That's my vibe. Then I had a baby. And when my first son was born, I went through postpartum depression. And it was a period of time, maybe 3 months or so, where I was like, why am I here? Like, adding a kid to one's life really helps. It's like it's hard, but it's this disruption where you say, what is my identity? And as a mom, a working mom, I said, what's my deal? Am I going to go back full-time? Am I going to go back part-time? It wasn't really an option to stay home full-time, but that invitation is there. And so then the trades start to be like, cool, if I go back full-time, is that justifying the daycare, right? Like there's all these logistics and the identity evolution there. And so it started to be like, well, if I go back to full-time or part-time, really doesn't matter. Like, what does how compelling does that job need to be to keep me there? And I actually really liked my job. But for the first time, I don't know where it came from. Obviously somewhere very big, but I was like, what if I did my own thing? And then, and that's the kind of risk that I really never thought that I would be up for. I will also say that I didn't tell my parents until I had already quit my job, because there are a lot of people in our lives who are so nervous about our 401ks and like, are you sure about this? And are you being a little reactive? And is this postpartum depression asking? And you know, and my parents are awesome, but I think in those moments where anyone listening also is trying to make a risk choice, you should be mindful of who you invite into that conversation, if anyone, because there are some people who are going to want to protect you, and it's coming from a place of love. But frankly, I did not need one more voice of anxiety. I was like, oh, can I even do this? And so I was like, guess what, guys? I quit my job, you know, and it was like, no backsies, you know.
Too late now.
Right. Exactly. So point being, I think there was risk from day one, but that said, I did not step out of my role with no network and no instinct on what people would pay for. And so I started there, you know, there's a lot of people, oh, should I be a coach? Should I start my own coaching business? I mean, maybe, but who are you coaching, and do they already want to pay you? That's a great way to not start very risky.
Right. Or even go get a couple that you can coach before you do that.
Totally. Yeah. Pre-game. Yeah.
Pre-game. Yeah, that's how I started mine. I got like one client and then was like, I'm out of here.
Yep.
What about the person? What did you do? What was your job before you started your own thing? What did you do?
I was head of employee development at an agency in New York.
Okay.
So what we today might call people ops.
Got you.
Yeah.
What about that person who you were then? Can you look back and like kind of understand that person at all? Can you like look back and put yourself in those shoes? I have a hard time with that.
Well, it's interesting you say that because this is, let's see, I started Plucky in 2013, and then I had gotten that job that I just mentioned in 2008. So I come back from Paris with my master's in French Lit, and long story very short, within a couple months, I'm like, I need a job. And so a friend of mine is like, you should come work for a tech company. And I'm like, what would I do?
Yeah.
What possibly? Yeah. So I get hired there. So that was a risk in itself. Master's in hand, guess I'll go work in tech, And so when I look back at the person that I was around 2012-ish, I just feel young.
Yeah.
I think I feel exciting. I mean, it was a great time. Let me be real. I met my husband at work. Like we were all in New York. We were in our 20s. We were going to concerts all the time. Then we're Q&Ing after work with beer. It's like, it was so good.
Right.
In some ways, I'm very nostalgic for that. But it was all preparing me for sure. But I just feel young back then. And it's kind of the opposite of what I was just saying, how now I feel this identity is sticking to me that I have to be the person to start the things. That is not who I was able to be in 2010 when I could just receive the things. That feels like a big difference.
It is. I don't remember what point it was. I used to think about all these people that I would go to ask for work. Like as a freelance artist or a graphic designer or whatever. There's this network of people that I knew had projects. And then at some point I became that person that had projects that people, and it was like, when did that happen? Like, what the hell just happened? But it's sort of like, I think it's sort of like getting older too. You don't really realize it. You're like, crap, I got kids. What happened? Yeah.
Oh my God. I had this thought the other day that it is my parents' first time being 68.
Yeah.
Like they've never been 68 before too. So when you lift your eyeballs to the generation above you, like everybody's doing it for the first time, which is actually like terrifying. And I'm like, doesn't anyone know what's going on around here?
They don't. Yeah.
Oh man. Yeah. So, people becoming grandparents for the first time or people retiring. That's all just life work, man, like journey stuff. And it can be inspiring. And also some days it can feel like quicksandy.
Yeah, it's very quicksandy. Yeah. The reason I'm going down this road is there's this idea of I don't know if it's an idea, but like reinventing yourself. You know what I mean? And you're sort of talking about it, where you had a job, then you started your own business. Now you're going to start your own press, but you've wrote this book and now you're looking at this other thing, which is really another chapter. It could become a thing that's bigger than all the other things.
Yeah.
How about that in terms of the people you work with, the people that you coach? Like I've talked to people and, there's like, hey man, I do these things, but I'm really unfulfilled with it. And we have this culture of the side hustle coming out of that. I really think that's what it boils down to is like, can you reinvent yourself? It doesn't necessarily mean a whole new career. It could just mean like a new personality trait. I don't know, but like, what about that world? I mean, is that a thing that you see when you're coaching leaders?
Yeah, I think there's a spectrum here. There are a couple people who come to mind who I coach who are the kind of people that from one day to the next, they'll be like, now I'm a vegan. Now I cut my hair off, like
Right.
this that's actually two examples of the same person I can think of. Like he is very driven by that kind of just stark change. And then he takes it and, whatever, goes nuts with it. Is like totally cool, like super vegan. And then there are other people who I want to say are more maybe cemented in their story. And that's probably a more psychological assessment would need to be made. But my observation is that they're not ready to let go of the previous story yet. And so sometimes in my work with somebody, it is a lot of identity evolution, right? But like, it might be creating a soft landing for the new version. Like say, oh, well, maybe you should do XYZ. And then they're like, I mean, could I? You can see. So my job as coach in that moment is an invitation forward.
Yeah.
And then if I'm a good coach, I not only say, what if this happened? I also say, what would the first step be towards that? And if I'm a great coach, then I say, you can say yes, no, or counteroffer, but will you take that step by the time I next talk to you? And so this is where coaching becomes actually productive instead of just like, here's my feelings,
Right.
So yeah, that's my instinct, is that there's fear and probably some comfort. And frankly, also sometimes it's just not the right time to reinvent yourself. I mean, there's a lot of emergencies that could be happening. And it's just like, it is cheaper and easier for me to stay right here for a little while longer. And so sometimes I would say being a coach is permission for that too. Like, that's cool. Sounds like you're not ready for that disruption just yet. But in leadership, especially, that change, what's so heavy about it is it affects a lot of other people. So you can't just be like, I'm a vegan in a background, in a vacuum, you're just like, guess what? We're, God, I don't even know. We're all doing EOS. And it's like, okay, boss, cool. I guess we're all having new job descriptions or whatever.
Right.
And so your decisions reverb, and the evolution of your identity has way more impact, like echoes around, depending on how big your company is, the people around you. So there's some, sometimes hesitation to really put everyone around you through it if you're not yet sure yourself.
Yeah, for sure. Well, maybe I shouldn't make that big change with my vast employees.
Oh my gosh. I mean, listen, you could probably get them all on this call. And if everybody can Zoom on the same screen, then you can make your change. But, if you have to go to screen 2.
Interesting.
Sit tight, maybe.
Too many people.
Right, exactly. Yeah.
So, wow. So I do want to talk about this. I know I'm like ADHD brain here, but I've got this.
Oh, yeah.
And I've used this
good.
recently actually on a podcast that didn't air because it got kind of, business coachy and they didn't want to whatever. So I stopped recording. But where do you, so you've been running Plucky for a while and you've experimented in this world of creating products.
Yeah.
I mean, what's that about?
It's weird, right? Like if you're like
cool.
on her tombstone, also she made some packs of cards. Like,
it's
what?
Cool though.
It is cool. And that's probably, I think it connects with this concept of risk. So often in December, when I make my day of big dreaming and I plan the next year, I'm like, I am definitely not doing a new product next year. Like, I'm just going to sell the shit I have.
Right.
And then it's usually about April. I'm like, I'm hearing something.
Right.
I'm sensing something. And the mentor pack explicitly came from last year. The fact that last year, Q1, everybody was leaving their jobs because they could, and they could get like a lot of fat stacks of cash to do so. So what they wanted to talk about was decisions that their manager probably was not the right person to talk with because it would mean leaving their job. So I had all these people sort of looking for advice or mentors, really is what they were looking for. And I just heard it so often. And so it's kind of like user research sometimes, my job, right? Like I just have so many coaching sessions that I hear the same themes. And sometimes, side note, that gets actually really creepy where the same thing will come up all week. the same topic across many different people. And I'm like, oh, what's going on in the
happening?
universe?
Yeah.
Yeah, exactly.
Mm.
But anyway, so last year, early in the year, I was hearing a lot of this kind of need. And so equally, I was hearing like, I don't know who to talk to. Like,
Yeah.
how do I figure out how to negotiate stocks, equity, things like that? So I was like, all right, sounds like they need a tool. And it came exactly from a similar itch, which was managers who are new at their job. And they're like, I don't know what to talk about in one-on-ones. Asking questions is something I'm good at. And
Right.
again, teaching people to listen and hear underneath what we need to talk about is pretty easy, I would say, for me at this point in my career. So I was like, a third pack of cards. I wasn't sure, but then I was like, 3 is nice. Like 3 is a nice little set. So yeah, I was like, let me see if I do a draft of the deck, is it worth anything? And so I got my spreadsheet out. I did a bunch of questions. I passed it by some people I trust from a diverse perspective, I'll say. And I was like, all right, what else I got going on? I mean, it's like, I'm not going to travel.
Right.
It's COVID, right? Guess we'll do a product.
Yeah. Right.
So yeah, these things come very much as a response to something I'm hearing in the world. I would say none of what I have ever made, one thing maybe, but almost none of what I've ever made has been, I'm like, I have the idea to save the world. You know, it's
Right.
not me in a room. It's me in reaction to what I think
Right.
the world needs right then.
Right. Yeah, that's I'm sure you run across this too. How many people you talk to that's like, I'm starting a business and it's an app that does.
Yeah.
It's like, dude, you're gonna need more than that.
Right.
I
Yes.
don't need to. I know you came here for a mentor and I'm the guy like busting your bubble, but let's spend a little more time on this.
Yeah, or to talk about all the stuff under that. Why
Yeah.
are you starting a business? Why
Yeah.
that app? Where do you want it to go? What do you need it to make financially?
Right.
You know, all of these other questions, which at face value is sometimes hard for the mentor to
Yeah.
know what to ask, or hard for the mentee to know what to ask for.
Yeah.
Other than connection. Network is pretty much the obvious thing. Hey, you're my mentor. Can you connect me to blah, blah, blah?
So I have a couple of other questions that aren't like kind of down a path, but
Great.
there's some things that some people have sent in, not specifically for you, but for when I talk to people who are coaches or mentors or whatever.
Oh, great.
So what is your biggest fear in business or in life, and how do you deal with it?
Holy shiz.
Yeah, we got a couple of deep ones.
Love that question. I think it's a good sign that I'm not having a lot here.
We've been talking about risk for like the past 30 minutes.
I know, seriously. But I mean, this is the thing, right? Like, let me just be frank and say, when you almost die, everything else chills out. So
that's why I asked you the question.
Yeah.
I thought it was very appropriate for.
Yes. The tiny anecdote I will say here is that I started that manager training. It's called So Now You're a Manager, SNIAM for short. I started SNIAM a year and a half after brain surgery because I'd always had it as a little idea. And I was like, I'm not important enough to do that. I don't know enough people to do that. And after brain surgery, I was like, bring it, man.
Yeah,
like,
screw it. Yeah.
What is your life about if you're not going to mess around with something?
Yeah.
And so it was like, what's the worst case scenario that I mean, and I also was not taking irresponsible risks. I wasn't like, booking Madison Square Garden or whatever. So it was like, okay, why am I here? Relevant. Also, what can I mess around with and try and have experiences with? So point is that right after brain surgery, I was definitely very fearless and I took extremely different risks, even the cards came after that. Like, pretty much the business really ramped up. In life, I mean, the real thing that comes to mind is my kids and that something would happen to them.
Yeah.
And there's a lot in the news right now, as there has been for a few years, about tough stuff with schools and all of that jazz. And the way I handle that depends on the day, but
Yeah.
as best I can, I try to revert it back to what can I see in my space here, like
Yeah.
within the foot or 2 feet around me? How can I bring kind of love and energy to that space? And I can't control the rest of it, even though some days it's really scary to send your kids to school or wherever, you know?
Yeah. 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 I wonder about that. I'm sort of like the middle to end of Gen X, and I think about like, you know, being sent to school and coming home, no parents at home, and just kind of waiting until like 6 o'clock till they come home. And I
Yeah.
think about like that life versus, I want to monitor my kids. Well, my kids are older now, but I want to monitor my kids like on video while they're in the backyard playing while I'm at home.
Yeah.
Like that level of like worry. The world's a scary place, but you can't let it like freeze you,
Yeah.
and you can't let it stifle your kids' experiences.
Yeah.
Um,
Yeah. And that's, I think that there's some part of me that just kind of wants them to get a little bigger. Like
yeah.
even high school,
Uh-huh.
I think you're like, I can hear what you're saying more logically
Yeah.
when they are a certain age. And
Yeah.
it's the young
Mhm.
where
Yep.
like the risk and I'm not like insane parenting, like you can't do anything. I'm
Yeah.
actually kind of middle ground there, but what a trip parenting is, right?
Oh, yeah. Well, there's lots of podcasts about that one.
I know. We'll table that.
What are your beliefs about success and how do they affect your daily choices?
Mm, I believe very much in reading the energy of what's ready to happen.
Oh, wow.
So
Okay.
I think that there are things that will and could happen, but it's not, when I say it, I mean the world isn't ready for it. You aren't ready for it. You didn't sleep well last night, like all that kind of stuff. And success to me is not kind of like strong arming myself. I'm showing like my arm behind my back, right? Like not strong arming myself through something that isn't ready. Obviously, there's some stuff that I have to just do because it's happening, but as best I can, I try to remain flexible in a lot of
Mm.
ways so that I can read that room and read that energy and be like, you know what? This dinner is not getting cooked tonight. We're going out. Or I wanted to do a thing with my kids. They're playing video games because I got to get this shit done for work or whatever. So I do much better when I have agency over some flexibility.
Wow, that's cool. That's a very zen way of looking at the world.
You know what? I believe in everything, Gene.
No, for real. I mean, I do know a lot of people. I have people that are close to me that if things don't go the way that, whatever little 5 minutes they took early that morning to make a brief about how the day was going to be, the
Yeah.
moment it starts getting off rails, it's like meltdown time.
Oh yeah. I mean, I'm pissed about it when it doesn't go
Yeah.
how I wanted,
Yeah.
but I feel like I'm old enough now to realize that that is not useful, especially in the moment. And so to kind of just like bend to what needs to happen and then later readjust. Was that too much? Did we overload it?
Yeah.
I mean, it's life lived. And then hopefully you incorporate that.
Yeah. I like to think that, in this business, one of the business, Period 3, which is a web design company that I've
Mhm.
been running for about 25 years now.
Wow.
Me and my business partner, we have projects that go off the rails for,
Sure.
it's always the client's fault. Just kidding. I mean, most of the time it's my fault, but like I remember distinctly, he's looking at me, he's like, we had a project that was, not going well. The client
Yeah.
wasn't happy with, us not doing things fast enough or whatever it was. And he was like, look, this is when we're at our best, when the shit's hitting the fan, we're at our best. And I remember thinking like, we're here a lot, dude. Like we're at our best a lot. Like,
Mm.
but I think it's also like, I bring that up because like, I don't have a business plan, never had a business plan. It doesn't mean I don't believe in business plans, but like sometimes shit doesn't go the way you planned it.
Yeah.
Um, they call it a pivot too, like in the startup world. But like,
Yeah.
I mean, yeah, right. I mean,
Yeah, well, I think also the size company that you're describing and the size company that I'm describing, this is why I never wanted to become like 20 coaches or 30
Yeah.
coaches. I'm not interested in that kind of growth. And I think it will handcuff me for the kind of leader I want to be, which is a leader who can read the room and pivot, to use your word, or be nimble, or read what's going on in the planet and make a product about it.
Yeah.
Like, I'm not saying that every person is that kind of leader, but that is my self knowledge, that is how I will be most successful. And if I'm pissed because I've got 400 people and I might need to do layoffs and there's investors yelling, and I am not a happy person, like I'll just go work for someone else who could handle all that stuff.
Yeah.
So
For real.
in this really strange little way, actually, here, a perfect metaphor, I am myself a little indie press,
Yeah.
and so that's a value I have. And, again, kind of looking back, all the stupid signs point you all the time to the way. And now I realize, like, last year was me reaching for that big corporateness, agent through publishing process.
Yeah.
But it was just a beginning. It wasn't really where I authentically wanted to be. So, yeah.
That's a cool word. Authenticity. I struggle with that point that we're getting at with the business. Is like, we have a lot of conversations here, and I have a lot of conversations with other people about like growth versus like staying where you are. And when I say growth, I mean like head count. Because it's a services business. So like, you can't do more unless you have more people, essentially. But I struggle with that and you tie that into like thoughts of legacy. Like, what am I leaving behind? With this business, like if I go, does the business just end?
Right.
How do I get it to the point where if I go, the business continues? And it's like, it seems like the only way that can work is with more people doing the things I do. And then that leads to this same thing you just said, which is more anxiety and stress. It's like, that's a whole area of like worry that I think I'm okay with now, just not getting into, like not worrying about it.
It's so funny. Why, even as you're saying that, like, why is the word business so holy in that thought? Which is, if I die, does the business go too?
Yeah.
Businesses, I don't even know what I think about this, because it's a new idea based on what you just said, but the kind of like respect, almost like too intensely, for the concept of a business dying.
Yeah.
Like, a person dies, right? So okay.
Right.
But that entity, I mean, it's an interesting point for sure about, if I die at the moment, Plucky dies, right? But I also think of it as a good example is that this Friday, in a couple of days, I don't know when this thing will air, but I noticed again last week that 1 billion people are getting laid off. And I was like, you know what I would like to do? I would like to spend my Friday in a coach-a-thon. So I put my Calendly together and I said, I think I have 8 spots for half-hour sessions free for anybody who got laid off.
Wow.
And I put it up on LinkedIn. And, I'm booked for sure now.
I bet.
So that the business might die, but those are 8 people. And I am not overselling here. Who knows? Possibly it's just like a space for a conversation, and I don't know what they go away with. But I have held 8 people's stories that day. So if a business dies, fair enough. But just on that one day, 8 people's lives maybe were a little bit altered, or their energy was a little bit less drained by the end of the day when their kids came home. And so, I think there's a way to see impact in a lot of ways. And a businessentity.com that files taxes is one. And impact on individuals is another. And I think we're too stuck in the former.
Yeah, I think so too. We might feel a little more acutely because we're in the coaching, mentoring.
It's real.
Kind of where we are, but we're not like, well, with the exception of you making these cards and things, and we're not like making widgets necessarily. I wouldn't call those a widget, but
no, right, absolutely, yeah. And again, that brings the concept of seasons of work. There was a season of my job where I was helping people make websites and all that kind of stuff, and I still found ways to have impact on an individual basis with clients as well as people internally. That was and is always like one of my favorite things in the world.
Yeah, I had an employee, this was at this point like 8 years ago, but he was having this like existential crisis of like, we don't make anything. Like he was really on this like made in America kick. Like he wanted to buy things made in America and stuff. And he was like, we don't make anything, whatever. And I was like, bro, we make websites like for people, for businesses in America. Like, I don't know that it gets more like red blooded making things than that, you know, and it sort of like reframed his thought. And he was like, yeah, we make things. But yeah, it's interesting. One last question. What is one experience you've had that you would like to relive and why? I think about this one. I have like several.
Really? What's yours?
Like, yeah. I mean, and let me set that up with saying, leave out the, you know, expected answers of like, well, my children being born and the day I got married. Like no one gives a
I love my kids, but I would never say that.
Yeah, we know that. Like, an experience that I would relive is my first black belt test, completing that thing and having that conversation about, you know, the past like 6 years and then culminating in that moment and having that conversation. It was emotional, you know, but that's one of those things that's like, you know, that's mine, you know, and I keep that forever.
I think it's interesting. The thing that comes to mind for me, I don't know what this says. We can call therapists later. But so I think I just said a couple times that I did my master's in Paris, right? My, French Lit master's. And that was a year that I spent, you know, living over there with I had the responsibility of going to school and writing my thesis. And I also had the responsibility of working. Like I worked as actually a business coach, teaching people English. I know, talk about flags, right? But other than that, I had like no kids. I had a boyfriend, but then I broke up with him and kicked him out. And so then I was free and, you know, and I remember there are two things that come to mind. One was that I was out with friends. It was very late and I missed the last night bus home. So I'm on like one side of Paris and I need to walk back to my apartment. And I just walked and it took like 2.5 hours, but I walked and it was so great. And I decided to like go. I mean, some of it I was like, I'm not totally sure where I am, but I know I just keep going that way. And it was Paris at night. So like all the statues that you're familiar with, nobody ever looks at it like 3 a.m. And so I was alone and I could look at these things. And that was really awesome. I definitely will not forget that. And the other thing that I'm thinking of is
that's cool.
There's this little island in the middle of the Seine, in the middle of the city. And there was one night where just, you know, when you're American in Paris and you're in French school there, you meet a lot of international people. So there was like a friend from Hungary and there's a friend from Mexico. And it was kind of like a combined picnic thing last minute. Like, hey, you want to come eat? Okay, great. You'll bring wine. What are you going to grab? Okay, baguettes. Okay, I'll get cheese, whatever. And then it was like dinner time. We're just like sitting on this little island, hanging out. And it was like what I think childhood was, but it was adulthood in a young way. I was like 25 maybe.
Yeah.
And those two memories are just like so relaxing, I guess, for me to. And so if I had to relive it, you know, I think it would just be like your story, I think is one of such deep pride and like time victory, you know, and mine probably tells me I need a vacation. I don't know.
Well, take that vacation, man.
Yeah. Oh God.
Well, this has been a great hour. I appreciate your time talking to me about this stuff. We had a great conversation last time we talked. I wish I would have recorded it, but this is pretty good too. Good stuff.
No, thanks, Gene. And you know, every once in a while I think about this ending a podcast, but I never actually say it. But I will say, I think you are a person that people who listen to you would want to hear about. So if you ever need an inverse host, just call me. I would love to interview you.
That'd be cool. Maybe we'll do that. Maybe we'll do another one in another 6 months.
Take your time. Yeah.
But yeah, that'd be awesome.
I think often the hosts of podcasts, there are little parts of who you are that leak out, but you're never the full feature, you know?
Right. That is interesting. Yes. Yeah, we could do that. That'd be cool.
Cool.
And good luck on yours.
Hey, listen, everybody listening, I hope you're reserving about, let's say, $30 to buy my book. Just squirrel it away. By the time the book comes out, I promise it won't be that long. So inflation hopefully hasn't made it $40, but just put some cash away, and I'll tell Gene all about it.
Yeah, man. Well, I'll be the first in line to buy it. So
thank you so much, Gene. Thanks for having me.
thank you.